How's it going, folks? Time for a bit of a viewer's request clip. I've actually had quite a few people want to know how the water flows through the whole system since I posted the last clip. The clip was just on how I sorted out these beds here and plumbed them up roughly. So what I thought I'd do is we'd come back, we'd revisit the whole system, and I'll do a walkthrough from the fish tanks to the sump tank and from there out to the grow beds, and just give you a look at each part of the aquaponic system as it stands today. It will change in the future, but just so you can wrap your head around what I'm doing here. So off we go to the tanks. So here we go, guys. This is the start. This is where all the nutrient is produced. These are the two fish tanks. This one here is a jade perch tank. There's about 12, I'd have to say 600 gram plus fish in there. Some are close to a kilo. And the other one is a silver perch tank. Both tanks are 1,000 litres, by the way. This tank over here has roughly around about 58 silver perch in it, anywhere up to around about 100 grams I'd say at the moment. This tank needs to be thinned out, some are going to my parents, and the fish in here need to be harvested so fish from the fish farm can move in and take their place. So this is basically the start of the system. The fish food goes in, the fish convert it into ammonia and other nutrients. They then excrete it through their gills and their cloaca out the other end, and it then basically enriches the water with nutrients that flow down for the bacteria to do their thing. So that's basically how this system works, as in the nutrient side of things. As for how the water flows, we'll get in a bit closer and I'll just track the flow for you. So just down here we have 1-inch bilge line that's coming from the pump that is in the sump tank. This here will be replaced. I've been told by a very reputable source that this stuff isn't very good for water flowing through it. Even though it's smooth bore on the inside, these ridges aren't on the inside, it does accumulate a lot of waste, and I've seen that myself. So the straight PVC pipe is a lot better, and it will be what I'm switching over to in the future. But for now, we've just got this 1-inch or 25mm bilge line coming up, and it's delivering the water through to the system via a cut-off tap here, just so I can isolate the tank, into a PVC fitting that runs into a Venturi on the inside of the tank wall. So what this basically does is, this is a commercial version, mind you, it sucks oxygen or air through there, it mixes with the water and then runs out through there, give you a bit of a look at the bubbles, and oxygenates the water. Now it's flowing in through the top, and I've had people say but won't oxygenate down the bottom. Well, it will, because the drain, which is this white post here running down towards the bottom, it's taking water from the base of the tank, so any oxygen rich water from the top will be circulated through the entire tank here until it's basically sucked out through the solids lifting outlet, or slow. So that's basically how the tank is fed water wise. I've done up DIY versions of this and I've got them running in the fish farm at the moment, but I really wanted to spare no expense with the fish tank, so I went with these guys. Now, as for the water leaving the tank, that happens through this slow, as I mentioned before, solids lifting outlet. Basically, it's a drain fitting on the base that I've made up. It's a little DIY jobby. I got the idea from Mr. Paul Van. In fact, I got a lot of ideas from Mr. Paul Van. And it sits on the base with a small gap at the bottom of it, and water is brought up through this pipe along with the solids and taken out to the radial flow filter. Now with these round tanks, one of the good things about these guys, as you can see, the water's swirling around, and I've got fish jumping behind me. The water's swirling around, so a lot of the solids, or actually the majority of the solids, are brought into the centre, which is why I've got the slow in the centre and not to one side, and then the solids are able to be taken out. So what I'm going to do is just spook these fish, sorry jades, and just turn the water off here, let it calm down a little bit, and then we'll have a look at the base. So as you can see, there's virtually no solids down the base there whatsoever. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a very effective way to get the solids out of these systems. And also too, we're using a slow, when the water drains out of here, if there's ever a critical fault in the plumbing down the line, I don't have to worry about this tank running dry. If I had the outlet from this tank in the bottom, like I've seen on some people's IBC systems, they have the outlet coming from the tap in the IBC. If you have a problem further on down the line, a pipe leaks or whatever happens, you run the risk of running your IBC dry and basically killing your fish. So I really like this method of using the slows in the system, whether it's a round tank like this or the IBC. So we'll leave these guys alone. They're pretty much well spooked, I think, from having a hat trying to shade the slow. Just over there in the corner, a bit hard to make out, we have an air stone. So that air stone there supplies emergency backup air into this system, and it comes through a pipe, just a clear nylon tubing that comes from a backup air compressor, which I'll get to in a little while, but just to let you know, that's what that little blob down there is. So this is the external pipework for the solid lifting outlet. The water basically comes down there in a 50mm or 2-inch pipe, then drains into this 90mm pipe, and then runs down to the radial flow filter, and it picks up the other slow from the other tank along the way, which is just hidden behind a barrel there. So that's pretty much all how the wastewater runs out to the radial flow filter. Because it is a larger diameter and I don't have the maximum flow rate going through there at the moment, I am finding when I clean out the radial flow filter I need to give this a flush as well, as some solids do accumulate in there. It's easy enough to do. I've got an inspection port on both sides. I can just undo and flush with the hose. So the water then comes down this pipe, as I mentioned before, down here into this little sweeping bend, and then up a standpipe in there, which I'll show you in a tick. And there's just another access port. Like I said before, yeah, it's collecting a few solids, so in the redesign, when it happens, I won't be including that in there. Maybe a 45 bend, twin 45 bend, or maybe two 50mm pipes going through the side like the fish farm. We'll just wait and see. So the water comes in and then up this standpipe within the radial flow filter. Now, as you can see, it's inside another larger diameter pipe. The idea being the water's coming up over the top there, it's redirecting down around the outside of that pipe, and then when it hits the bottom, the speed of the water slows and any solids will precipitate out down the bottom to be taken away through a drain fitting in there. The clean water comes up around the outside and then onto the moving bed biofilter. Now, in saying that, this system I bought from Mr. Paul Van, great guy, check out his stuff, but I butchered them. He came around here to have a bit of a look and he just shook his head. So I haven't really set it up in the ideal fashion. So these filters, all these filters, please keep in mind they will be changing in the future, and I'll be reworking them in their alignment and all that, but I'm just showing you how the water goes through today. So into the moving bed biofilter. So this is the moving bed biofilter. It's got PeO3 media in it. It's got roughly around about 820 square meters of surface area per cubic meter of this stuff. I think that works out to be about 8,825 square feet of surface area per 35.3 cubic feet of this stuff. So it does have a lot of surface area. We've almost got as much biological surface area on this stuff in here as we do on the other beds. So it's pretty amazing stuff in that respect. So what we've got is just water coming in through the radial flow filter, just through this end cap with a whole heap of holes in it. The movement is being generated by the Venturi, which is just down the base here. It's running in, the waters and the air is being mixed through a hose that is just on the inside in here. I'll see if I can pull him out for you. Just this hose here, that's sucking oxygen down, or air down to the Venturi. And that's moving, causing this media to move. What that does is provide oxygen for the bacteria, and it also knocks off any dead bacteria in there, and they just sort of basically hopefully go out through this slow fitting out to the sump, or they just settle on the bottom of this and need to be cleaned out at a later date. Over here, the exit port is basically a modified slow. I did have it running all the way down to the bottom, but I had a few problems with solids accumulating down there. So what I've done is I've chopped it off half height, and it's collecting water midway through the column now. So I'm pretty happy that the water's churning nicely and I'm getting a nice exchange in there, but I do think I will have solids precipitating out down the bottom. I've changed some of the fittings around on this one here. I now have the drain on this side. It was around the back. The Venturi was going in there, but I've moved it to this fitting here, so it's basically as low as I can get it in the unit. So hopefully the bulk of the water is moving around, and then there's only a little area down the base there for solids to settle. So that's a pretty rough explanation of this guy. Really not needed if you're running with media beds, because you've got your biological surface area on your rocks or your clay or however you're growing. These are a good idea if you're running an NFT, nutrient film technique, or a DWC, deep water culture, the floating raft beds, because you don't have a lot of surface area in there. This is just something I'm sort of playing around with, and also too, I had no media beds. I only had one media bed on there for a little while, and I needed something to take up the slack to process the ammonia and whatnot. So there we go. From there, we move out through this little slough to a sump tank. This sump tank, as you can see, is rather dirty. It's acting as another solids trap. The base is mucky, so I haven't cleaned it out for a few weeks, so I'll be cleaning that out. It's just basically the water's coming through, and there's some of the deposits, the solids are depositing out. No big drama, not the best design, but you know, you get that. Anyway, the water then goes out through there and down through a 90mm pipe and into the sump tank, and just under the exit, oh, see that little blue knob? It's holding on a bag of shell grit, so hopefully the water running over the top of that is running through the shell grit and adding some carbonate in, because at the moment I'm having to dose this system with calcium hydroxide every second or third day, just to keep the pH up into the low 6s. So from there we pretty much will start off the plant side of things. So we'll hop around the other side here. So down the bottom there we have a pump in the sump tank, and it's bringing the water up through these two hoses. We'll get to the bottom hose in a minute. I went through this in the last clip a bit, so I'll try and be brief. Just a hose here with a cut-off valve so I can isolate it if need be. Comes around, splits up and goes to these two Dutch barrel style arrangements. The water just flows through over the roots of the ginger, which is doing rather well, thank you very much. And then out through these little drain ports down the bottom. There's another one around the back there for that barrel there. We also have a riser that brings some water up into here. There's a tap on it so I can regulate the flow, and that basically is just this grow bed here. The pipe work then goes along underneath the other beds, and we'll hop around there, and the water just comes out there, splits, goes that way there for this grow bed over here, and over on this side it goes into that little port for this grow bed over here. So all three of these three beds have a bell siphon built into them. Basically what happens is water floods in here underneath the bell. There's a standpipe down in there, just there you can see him. Water then flows down from there, he's a little bit crooked. Water then flows through there, down into the sump tank. A little bit of a vacuum or suction happens underneath the bell, and I've just triggered it by putting the bell in there, but it basically drains all the water out of the bed. So this is what they call a flood and drain bed, or an ebb and flow I think people call them as well. So that's basically how all these beds are irrigated. So that's the water being dumped from two of the grow beds just into the sump tank here. There's a couple of fire-tailed gudgeons down in there, some little fish. They're just remnants from before this was even an aquaponic system. They've just survived. Down in here we have a float switch. That's a piggyback float switch. When that float drops, the pump automatically turns off, and the plug for the pump is actually plugged into it. And this is the plug for the float switch. We have the pump plugged into it. When that float drops, it breaks the circuit. So no power will flow through here to the pump. So it's pretty basic setup. Some pumps will even have them built into them. This is just something that I decided to put in there just as a bit of a fail-safe. So if we do lose all the water in the sump tank for whatever reason, the pump doesn't burn out. Back here at the sump tank, and the water then starts to cycle again through the pump, and then this time we'll follow it back to the fish tanks. So there's the pipe that takes the water back to the fish tank. Just up along the ground here, there's a bit of a V that separates the flow. We have one lot running off into the base of the moving bed biofilter just there with a tap to adjust the flow rate, and on the other side of that is a Venturi, exactly the same one as in the fish tank. And yeah, so it's basically aerating and adding some turbulence to the water in there. That little tap just lets me adjust it when I need to change the flow or isolate it, turn it off if I'm working on the system. Otherwise all the water drains out through the Venturi back into the sump, and you can have overflow issues. Now from there the rest of the water goes up and V's off again, another one of these handy little barb V's I got, into both fish tanks. So that's pretty much all it for the flow of water through the system. I'll just quickly show you the backup system I've got on the go. It's not a finalised system. I'm actually working on a different way to try and trigger the backup air and water as it's needed in both the system, the fish farm and the aquaponics, sorry. So I'm just waiting on some parts to arrive for that, and I will do a clip on it if it's successful. So anyway, I'll take you down and give you a look at the cabinet. The power for the unit actually comes in through a trench I dug through the lawn. I got a Sparky to come in and do it properly. That's an external power point. Lead just in there that runs under the ground. That black stuff is just irrigation pipe. I didn't want the sharp rocks to basically jeopardise the integrity of the power lead, so I put it on the outside. It's running underground there, up inside this cabinet, which we picked up on Curbside Cleanaway. And this here is pretty much where we house the I'll just show you this. It's our little gecko. Oh, there he goes. Our little Asian house gecko. Sorry, matey. This is where we house the battery and the feed and a few other bits and pieces down in there. So the backup system pretty much all comprises of, move some bits and pieces out of the way here, a relay switch. Now I'm not going to tell you which relay switch because it will differ around the world as to what sort of relay switch. I actually got the idea for this from a thread on Backyard Aquaponics, so I'll put a link in the description below. Follow that link and it will give you the part numbers from I think it's J-Car here in Australia. So Chainsaw's done, you know, a great service to the community by putting that up. Pretty basic, a relay switch. That relay switch is held open by a little 12-volt modem power pack. It's just an old modem power pack. It's 12 volts, so you can work with it at home. It's just a plug and play thing. Powers the relay. What that does is hold the relay switch open. If there's a power failure, that relay switch then closes, and I'll just simulate that by turning off the power down here on the board. The relay closes, and that little pump up the back there pretty much all kicks into gear and starts the air flowing into the two fish tanks in the aquaponics system. I actually had a pump failure on the aquaculture system the other night. I had a pump burn out. We thought it was a power surge, but it turns out that yeah, it's something to do with the pump itself, according to my father, knows a lot more about it than me. So in that scenario, I had no water. I actually had to come down at 12:30 and take me about half an hour working in the dark, trying to put a new pump on. So very lucky I stayed up late that night and I caught it, but otherwise I would have been, well actually the fish would have been dead meat. So I'm trying to hook up a way that I can get the power to turn on when the flow rate slows down or stops within the system. So that's something I will be looking into, and you will see a clip on that because I think it is a much better way to go rather than something that relies on power to be either on or off to turn your back up on. So now for a little bit of a look at what we're growing. Just in this bed here we have a rather nice jalapeno, but every time a decent sized fruit sets on it, the fruit flies hit, so I'm going to be bagging them up. We have a whole heap of this Okinawan spinach all through the bed. Just started by cuttings. It's a fantastic plant. I love eating it raw. Tastes like a lettuce crossed carrot. A couple of Mugsy Jeff or Jeff Harriet's shallots planted through there. Tomato, a lone lettuce because the others got taken by a caterpillar. That's just self-seeded. Over the back we've got Maya's mint that I rescued from her garden. We've got a lemongrass. The raspberry dwarf mulberry tree's doing really well, and some perpetual leeks over there. This bed here is a bit of an experiment at the moment. I was going to put some root pouches in here with some coconut coir and other bits and pieces, but yeah, the testing isn't looking too good in little buckets I've got it set aside, so I might do something else in there for now. One of the projects I have on the go is just sprouting grain for the chickens, but I'll show you that in another clip. Around here, oh, also have a kangkong. Around here, it's just some of my experiments under there. I've taken the red vein sorrel out of the bag. Because the bag was sitting proud of the bed, I actually had ants move in and start to make a nest, so I just took the plant out and plonked him in. We have some tomatoes, a couple of different dwarf tomatoes there, some parsley, turmeric I put in over the back there, a capsicum that I'm just going to pull out. It's just been, yeah, it's not doing anything. It's got a little flower on it. It's only what? Probably about half a foot tall, 15 centimetres. A couple of sweet basil and some thyme. They're all doing fine. The other day I went and grabbed a whole heap of Kira's carrot seeds and just sprinkled them around as a bit of a border around the edge, so they're doing well in there. I've just received a new lot of beetroot seeds yesterday, so they'll be planted out here. It was a very high 30s day today. I think it got up to 39, about 102 Fahrenheit, so didn't really want to plant anything in there today. That'll go out tomorrow. Over here I've still got a little dwarf tomato, kangkong, and the two lots of ginger, which I'm rather impressed with. It's done really well in the aquaponics. So that's pretty much what we've got on the go. Plans for the future, constant flow bed or deep water culture bed, sorry, hasn't been put in yet. I'm still trying to find a suitable material I can use as the float or the board to put the grow grips in to grow them. Sorry about that, Craig, it's hit a bit of a wall at the moment. So as soon as I've sourced some recycled material I can use as a board, yeah, that one will be up and going. But yeah, I suppose that is pretty much all it. So there you go folks, there's a bit of a look at just how the water flows through the system, a little bit of a rundown of what we've got in the beds, and yeah, some of those bits and pieces like those filters, they will be coming out and I'll be putting some different ones in. So I'm pretty happy with the way the system's going at the moment. There are a couple of mistakes I've made along the way, but that's just one of the things. I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm just building this as I go, designing it as I go, taking useful tips and bits of information from Facebook groups, forums like Backyard Aquaponics, also Mr. Paul Van, he's got a great site, he's just starting to put articles back on it. He's given me so much help through this, so I'm just going to put a couple of playlists up that side over there, just to show you how things have progressed over the years, how I've built things, so it might help you guys out a bit more. Other than that, I'm pretty much all going to leave it there. If you do have any comments, questions or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments section below and I'll get back to you where I can. Have a great one guys, and I shall catch you next clip. Cheers! A couple of days after I shot the clip, I harvested these guys. The one on top is 1,500 grams, or roughly 3.3 pounds, and the small one below is 800 grams, which is roughly 1 3/4 pounds I think. So here's just a bit of a quick look at the silver perch feeding. I don't know if they'll come up, I've sort of stuck a whopping great big camera there, and also turn the Venturi off. Oh, there they go. So these guys are very active little fellas. I bought some slightly larger pellets for them, which they should be on now, but I'm just using up some small 1mm feeder that I've got on them. And then these guys will move straight up. They could probably even go to a 3mm pellet, I think. Might be pushing a 4. There you go, there's a bit of a look at the silver perch.